Hey, Next Levelers, Bob Gibbons here. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Next Level Show, where we're going to learn what works, what doesn't work when starting companies. And today I'm excited. We got great guests with us. We got Bobby Sharp and Sheffield Clark. These guys started Coinsource. And Coinsource you can find online at coinsource.net. And I'm blown away by what these guys have done because, you know, we've all heard of blockchain. We've all heard of Bitcoin. We've all heard of, you know, cryptocurrencies, all that kind of stuff. But how do you make money in that? Is that done in the trading of those things? That seems awfully risky because they're so volatile. But how do you service people in that space and still make money? We're going to find out from Bobby and Sheffield. So thank you guys for being on the show today. We're excited to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's start off with, you're at a party and somebody walks up and says, "So what do you do?" What do you say?
I say we're a technology company. Depends if I want to talk or not. I don't know what Chef says, but because I know as soon as I say Bitcoin or I go down that rabbit hole, game on. We are going to be educating the masses. But I'll tell you, with that being said, it's we're going on 4 years, and so we got in pretty early. In fact, a Bitcoin was trading at $168 when we put our first machine in, which was in Las Vegas. But to answer your question, now I really own it. I own that we are in cryptocurrency. We are Bitcoin, and we process Bitcoin and cash to crypto basically, and I own it. For me personally, I'm excited about talking about it now. But 3 years ago, everybody thought it was just strippers and pimps and all kinds of
drug dealers.
Exactly. Or I was ushering in like the one world currency, right? So,
and that's a good reason to avoid the question altogether when it's asked.
I
say financial technology. I point out that we're the largest retail distributor of Bitcoin to cash in our space that operates a kiosk in the United States and the world. And if I don't feel like talking, I just say that, I run a financial institution and leave it at that.
Okay. So
because we're regulated as one. I mean, we're regulated as a financial institution at the end of the day.
Okay. So I want to get to the regulation part in a minute, but
it's
before we do
of
that, it's got to be. And actually it was a bit of a surprise to me, but we'll get to that in a minute. So going back to the explanation though, let's assume that the person is somebody you want to talk to. She's really cute and you want to impress her, but what do you really?
My wife knows all about it.
You guys, you guys are married, so I'm teasing, but how do you actually explain what you do? Because you're not actually creating cryptocurrency, as I understand it. You're not creating Bitcoin. You're not a miner, but you're a service provider to that world.
And it's really about who our customer base is. I mean, 22% of the United States, Bob, is underbanked or underserved. I mean, there's a reason that these services like Western Union and MoneyGram and check cashing facilities, those exist because there's a vast piece of the population in the United States that don't have access to traditional banking services. And that's really who we're servicing currently at the kiosk level.
Yeah.
Now that's interesting to me. So the underbanked.
And that's how they're utilizing it, is my point. I mean, they're using Bitcoin as more of a medium of exchange. We're charging 10%. I'm sure we'll get to that down the interview, but we're charging 10% currently at the kiosk. And when you go to Western Union or MoneyGram, sometimes it could be in the 15, 16, 17% range when you look at the interest rate plus the flat fee that's being charged. So we undercut that for people that want to come to the kiosk, buy Bitcoin, and then send money to a relative.
Okay.
That's just a small, that's obviously huge. But, of course, using our kiosk is the fastest way to buy Bitcoin. So someone reads the news and sees something going on in China and they think there's going to be a run on something. They immediately want to get Bitcoin. Maybe they don't have a bank account linked to an exchange, or they don't want to go through that whole process. The easiest way to do it is to come to one of our kiosks, put cash in, actual fiat money, and we're going to convert that immediately. So you're actually going to you're going to walk away from the kiosk having Bitcoin in your wallet.
And kind of like Bobby said, at $168 when we started this, there were very few retailers that were accepting it for payment. Mm-hmm. And now you've got the Expedias, the Microsofts, the Dells of the world that are accepting Bitcoin as payment. So if you don't have a debit card to link, online to PayPal or to buy things currently with, you can come convert your cash to cryptocurrency, your digital money, and then purchase things online with it. So there's quite a few applications that we feel like our customers are taking advantage of.
So if I come up to one of your kiosks, and I actually looked on your website and I found the one that's closest to me, and it's actually probably less than a mile from my house, not even a mile from my house. And so I go up there and I set up an account with you guys, and I put in, I know the maximum is $5,000, the minimum is $5. So anything between $5 and $5,000 I can
per day,
I can buy Bitcoin. And when I make that exchange, I put in my $5,000 of cash, I get the Bitcoin. I'm actually not receiving anything physical back in my hands.
No, you're
so
not.
So I'm opening a digital account at that point.
On your phone. It's the mobile wallet.
And it's kind of where everything's migrating to, right? I mean, how many people are using cash anywhere? There's debit cards, there's credit cards, I mean, you go to Starbucks, you're using a QR code.
Apple Pay.
Apple Pay. I think the world itself is migrating to online. Everything is.
I think you're right. And in fact, I'll give you a quick funny story. Yesterday, I went to my chiropractor and I went to check out, and for some reason their little machine wasn't working to take my debit card. And so I pull out my wallet and I've got $1 short of the amount I need. But I know the chiropractor well. He's been a client and all the rest. Anyway, so I just handed the woman the money. I said, just tell Chad I'll owe him $1 tomorrow, next time. And she kind of got this very strange look on her face, like, I don't know what to do with that. And then another woman came along, and they're both looking at the cash, and I'm like, it's just cash. Just take the cash, and I'll owe him $1. And they gave it back to me, and they said, cash is complicated. What? Just pay us the next time you're in.
Try finding banking in this industry.
I couldn't believe it.
That's exactly right. And it's not a simple plug and play. People might listen to this and think, oh man, we'll go put out a bunch of these machines and we're just going to make a ton of money. Well, there is a lot, getting back to regulation, there's a lot that has to go into that. And finding, for instance, banks are having a problem with car washes. Banks are having a problem with all kinds of anybody that's taking cash. So a lot of retailers across the country, and even countries now, i.e. Denmark and some others, are getting rid of cash altogether. They just don't take cash. So your chiropractor, the reason it's a pain in the butt is because what do? We have to charge for the service, but now we're going to have to do a separate deposit with this cash into the bank. But we don't do cash deposits. Even that little amount is a headache for a lot of these.
We still feel like we're a ways away, though, from a fully cashless society.
Yeah.
And there's still a place for it in society and exchanging value in those things. But, it is ironic that we're taking on physical dollars and exchanging it for something that's, going to put us out of business someday, probably.
I'll give you an example. So we went to the very first time we got into this, we were in 2015, and I used to own restaurants out on the West Coast, and my buddy I owned a restaurant with has since opened a bunch in Vegas. So we thought, okay, we'll put our first machine in Las Vegas, but who are we going to get and how are we going to explain what this is? But I have a good relationship with Vaughn, and so I go up there and I talk to Vaughn. I fly out to Vegas, and I said, Vaughn, so I'm putting this machine in. People are going to buy Bitcoin with it. He's like, what? I was like, because he's in the Miracle Mile shops.
Sounds shady
and
to
he
me.
goes, so people are going to put real money in here, and you're going to give them fake money in return. I said, yeah. He goes, all right, have at it.
I love the fake money. It's like you're expecting monopoly money to come out or something.
The irony is he's now that's an asset class for him, right? He's heavily vested in a variety of different cryptos. But at the beginning,
same thing with our stores.
Well, that's exactly right. That's so funny. Sheffield brings up a great point. Our stores initially, when we were having to go ask these C-stores, right, that we want to put these machines in, it's going to be something different, yada, yada, yada. Well, I would say probably 60+%, maybe even 70% now are asking us to pay them in Bitcoin, not pay them with cash, what we typically would pay for a 2x2 foot square in their place.
Interesting. So you have a rev share model where they get no?
We don't. We pay them a flat fee to
Okay.
kind of rent that 2x2 space is how I would couch it.
Okay, and it's most often a convenience store somewhere?
It is. We look for, well-lit areas, great hours, 24-hour, close to public transportation in the San Franciscos and New Yorks of the world, close to interstates, like, 635 or 30 if you're here in Dallas-Fort Worth. So highly accessible is the main thing with good hours.
Well, and not only that, but the store owners are used to just strange people walking into a gas station,
Well, and they're looking for ways to drive traffic.
Absolutely.
I mean, when pay-at-the-pump technology came out in the early 90s, that killed in-store traffic. So they're looking for anything to bring a customer in. And, it's not widely adopted enough yet, Bob, that it's a purpose-driven customer. So they look online, they go to the Coinsource website, they see the machine that's 3 miles from their house, and they're going there with a purpose to buy Bitcoin. You're not going to get an opportunistic transaction where you would walk into a gas station and think, I need to get $100 out of my bank account and use the traditional ATM.
Yeah, it's kind of the reverse model of a traditional ATM.
It is.
You know, a traditional ATM, I'm going there to get cash out. With yours, I'm going there to put cash in.
Right.
To get a digital wallet that now has my money that I can do something, my Bitcoin, which is money, I guess.
Well, and it's still a very niche market. So if a gas station owner can differentiate themselves from other stores in their area, then, you know, it's just another reason to bring a new customer base in. And most likely they're going to turn around and spend money inside the store as well on another product.
Yeah, once you get in there and then you have that impulse, you can't get past that candy aisle.
Right.
Or that impulse at the
lottery
front.
tickets or Cokes or chips or whatever.
And you know, just to get back to some of the reasons that people would utilize this, a lot of people, this is, believe it or not, a lot safer than putting, you know, cash in a coffee can and putting it under your pillow, right? And not only that, this is more of a commodity that now they've invested in, right? And they can grow with it. And so say you were buying early in the early days at $168, and when it shot up to 20 grand, that's a pretty doggone good stock.
Yeah, yeah. Just I like that.
But even at $4,000 a day, I mean, that's a good return.
Yeah, of course. Now, whenever you have this kiosk in this convenience store, they ultimately have to have 2 kiosks now, 2 ATMs, one for cash, you know, from U.S. currency, and one for the Bitcoin. If I come up to yours and I put in something other than U.S. dollars, do you take other currencies, foreign currencies?
We can program the hardware and our software, which is proprietary to us now that we own, and we can talk about that. We can program that. If we put a machine in Mexico, we could make it compatible for pesos, for example.
Okay.
But another application,
we'll take that after the break.
Yep.
Sorry, Bobby, I'm going to have to interrupt you. We're going to take our first break. We'll be right back with the guys from Coinsource. Go to coinsource.net to learn more. All right, we are back with the Next Level show. Bob Gibbons here, and I'm here with Sheffield Clark and Bobby Sharp. They're the founders of Coinsource, and you can find out more about them at coinsource.net. So, guys, just before the break, we were talking about how, you know, whether or not there's foreign currency opportunities, and you were saying you can program your ATMs to be accepting of any foreign currency. And Bobby, I interrupted you. You were about to say something very witty.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's why we get along, yin and yang.
Yeah.
So what I was going to explain is another application to utilizing Bitcoin, or if you don't want to carry cash on a plane and you were flying to Japan, let's just say, you'd be able to buy Bitcoin here, fly with it, and then pull it out, not paying that heavy currency exchange rate that you typically would pay in like Japan. So now I can go to a machine over there and literally pull out yen, and that's just based on your wallet, which was probably a minimal fee, not the
much cheaper than currency.
Yeah,
you know,
really.
exchangers.
Absolutely.
Right. All right, so let's talk about fees as long as we're on that topic. So if I walk in and I put in, let's just call it $1,000 of U.S. currency to buy Bitcoin, and Bitcoin you say is trading at around 4,000. So to make it easy, I'm going to buy 1/4 of a Bitcoin with $1,000 U.S. But there's a transaction fee. So what are my transaction fees to buy that?
You're going to pay a 10% flat fee.
Okay.
And how we establish that, I mean, multiple ways, but number one, our competitors are usually 15 to 20%. So that was an easy place to come in and undercut them at least by 50% of what they're charging.
Yeah.
My background is in the traditional ATM space, Bob, and the traditional ATM transaction is about $60. The surcharge on that transaction is usually $2 to $3, and then your bank is going to penalize you for using a white label ATM at the end of the month and surprise you in your bank statement with another $2 to $3 fee. So if $60 is your average transaction, you're in the $5 to $6 range. We felt like that was somewhat analogous to doing the 8 to 12% range, so we just settled in on 10%.
But we also, the part of our concept, and I give Sheffield all the credit in the world for this, was making sure that we weren't predatory, that we made sure that we were always the lowest interest rates, that we didn't, even though we had a bird in the hand here, that we wanted to make sure that we were actually growing this industry and we were doing something different with it. And that's why
one of the spaces we feel like it could disrupt is the remittance space. And the example I gave earlier, you know, it's 14, 15, 16%. So we're undercutting them as well.
Now, what do you mean by the remittance space? What does that mean?
Western Union MoneyGram to send money. So if you want to send money from Texas to Mexico, my research, our research, you're in the 14-15% range sometimes with the fees that they charge, flat fee basis plus the interest rate. So we felt like 10% was competitive across all lines of how people are utilizing the machine.
Okay, so I go into my ATM a mile from my house. I put in my $1,000. I'm actually getting $900 then worth of Bitcoin, so it's a little less than a quarter of a Bitcoin currently. I now go to some other country, Japan, Europe, whatever, and I want to take out currency in their denomination. Let's say I want the euro. So I go to get, is it another 10% to take the money out?
So when you have the buy and sell, so yeah, there's a lot of regulation that goes into this. So listen, it would be great not to have
the
to
sell
have
is usually cheaper though.
Yeah, the sell is going to be cheaper, considerably cheaper. So probably 7%, probably 7-8%. But with currency exchange, it's all over the place. Go to Argentina and try to get some Cambia right now.
Really? I don't have any plans for Argentina currently. I'd love to go, but
and everybody knows not to go to the airport, right, and do it. But then once you get out, you got to really trust.
But I mean, how many retailers in Japan are just accepting Bitcoin?
Oh
though?
Gosh.
See, I don't know if there's really necessarily a
no reason.
Exit point to offboard the coins to cash. I mean, I think you onboard it and then you're never exchanging currency to begin with. You're just you can go and make purchases while you're in that country.
Okay. So what about what areas of the world are most advanced in the use of Bitcoin currently?
I think
at
Asia.
The retail.
I think Asia.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Asia is
South Korea, Japan. I mean, China cracks down on things, but there's still an enormous amount of adoption there.
In the U.S.
In the U.S.
I mean, the U.S. for sure.
I think U.S., Western Europe are always going to be in the mix in those discussions. But for our product, Bob, we really feel like the third world, Argentina, for example, Africa, India, those places for the unbanked and underserved, where there's 2 billion across the globe versus the 23% in the United States, which is 65 million. We're barely scratching the surface with that type of transaction.
Now, I want to go back to that because you've mentioned the unbanked a couple of times. Sure. And I'm totally ignorant when it comes to Bitcoin. I don't own any Bitcoin. I don't own any, what's another one? Ethereum, I think.
Ethereum, yeah.
So there's a variety of
There's 4 or 5 that are
and I don't own any of them. I don't 100% understand it still, I guess, but I'm making progress. So whenever I start hearing about the unbanked, my initial assumption is that people that are unbanked are probably less sophisticated than people that have bank accounts. So why would they be using a cryptocurrency? It seems like that would be more difficult for them to understand and to use, but it sounds like that I may be totally wrong in that.
100%. So when you go to Africa, right, everybody pays their bills with smartphones, and everybody uses their smartphones for everything, right? So they're actually more sophisticated than you would think. These underbanked and underserved, and that's when he talks about unbanked or underserved. There's those people that just can't get bank accounts. Maybe they had an insufficient fund, can't get a bank account for 5 years. What do? Right? They got to go cash their checks in these
that are blacklisted.
Right, or blacklisted from banks. Or to be honest with you, there's a lot of millennials right now that just don't trust big institutions. They are literally saying, no way, Jose, I can do it this way.
Libertarians.
Libertarian on the more,
You said that with a little disdain, I think.
No, not at all. No,
Paul's a user.
We love all customers. We love all customers.
No, we do. But with saying all of that, the underbanked and underserved is just an easy way to say these are people that just don't want to align themselves with traditional banking, whether it be
or that the banks have failed.
The banks
they've failed them with providing reasonably priced financial solutions and services. So they're utilizing this instead. I mean, to Bobby's point about Africa, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Go ahead, please.
In Kenya, the original kind of cryptocurrency in my mind was M-Pesa, which is owned by Safaricom, which is the big mobile phone manufacturer and service throughout the continent of Africa. And now M-Pesa's got 30 million users. So you've got 80-something%, I think it's 82% or so, Bob, of smartphone adoption in Kenya. So they've got smartphones, they're heavy cash users, so they're converting their cash to this digital currency. They're carrying around on their mobile phone, so they don't have the clunkiness of cash anymore, and they're paying their rent with it. They're going to the market with it. They're exchanging goods and services with it. They're absolutely sophisticated enough to use this and smarter than the rest of us, I think.
Yeah, to be honest with you, you'd be surprised at just the amount of, let's just call them unbanked right now, that have utilized our kiosk for entrepreneurialism. Explain the guy that was buying the shoes from China. Remember that guy?
There was a Chinese manufacturer for tennis shoes that was, and we can get into our compliance department things, but we definitely know our customer and look into what the activity is if there's a high level of volume. And this individual had a high level of volume, so we were looking into and discussing with him open dialogue on what he was utilizing Bitcoin for. There was a Chinese manufacturer that was offering a discount on their product if you paid in Bitcoin. 20, 30%.
Whoa.
So he was coming and buying, 10% Bitcoin from Coinsource, saving 20%, buying these sneakers, and then marking those up.
Put them on eBay, right?
And putting them on eBay and turned it into a small business as a part of it. So
that's awesome.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Talk about arbitrage.
Yeah, exactly.
I love hearing those kinds of things. I just wish I was smart enough and had enough time to do that kind of thing.
Yeah,
it was neat though. He furnished, invoices and receipts, and we were fascinated by it. Obviously, it's a great case study, for guys like you that want to know about it. But it's pretty neat ways that guys and girls are utilizing our machines.
Interesting.
And the other thing is, he was talking a little bit about our anti-money laundering and know your customer policies. We're aggressive in that. We're the best there is in the business. And in fact, it was said by the I don't want to name the name just in case, but they're a compliance audit company, and they said we set the standard for compliance in the entire industry, which was
awesome.
a big deal. But by saying that, the reason I was telling you that is because when people pull money out of an ATM machine, fiat money, you have no idea what happens to that money. You have zero idea. Using blockchain technology, you're able to kind of help understand where that money is going up to a certain point,
Yeah, now the impression that I've gotten, and a lot of the talk I've heard about Bitcoin, is that it's used in the black market a lot, in whatever way the black market is, whether it's drugs or cigarettes or whatever the black market is, that people are doing that because they can't be traced with it. But whenever I open an account with you guys, I got to give you a copy of my driver's license. You know who I am. It seems like is that an inconsistency in any way, or is just my assumption that it's for the black market or has been used a lot in the black market just wrong?
I'm sure, like the internet, that's how it was created originally, and that's how it was utilized originally. I'm not saying it was created for that reason, but it was definitely abused, like most new, innovative, cutting-edge technologies are. But I think we've learned pretty quickly that the regulated companies in the space are the ones that are going to be here for the long haul. And I just think that's the way our country's ran. It's highly regulated. We've navigated probably the most highly regulated country in the world here with this. And I feel like with the compliance infrastructure that we've built out, it's really one of our biggest assets long term. It's cliche, but it's kind of the sprint versus the marathon analogy, and I think it's definitely a marathon for us long term.
Got you.
No, absolutely.
So whenever we're thinking about buying something and I want to buy it from some other country and I use my Bitcoin to do that, and I'm using your service because I've downloaded your app, I've got my sort of digital wallet with my Bitcoin. Every transaction I make is now traceable. Yes, no,
anonymously traceable. If that makes sense.
Now, why anonymously? If it's in your system and you know who I am, how is that anonymous?
Well, there's a wallet address that's assigned to you. It's a big, long address that's assigned to you. So you'd be able to see that address on blockchain. Okay. But it wouldn't necessarily say Bobby Sharp just went and, bought 20 Bitcoin.
But if you buy coins and you send them to a dark market that's known by our services that we utilize, and that dark market's, wallet address is identified and clustered correctly, then yeah, absolutely, we're able to shut that transaction down
immediately.
All right, we'll take another quick break, and we will be back after these messages.
Have you had a successful career selling to businesses? Maybe tired of having your income limited by arbitrary compensation plans that penalize you for selling more? If so, you should consider tenant representation, a specialty within commercial real estate. At Riata Commercial Realty, Inc., we represent companies and nonprofits that occupy office buildings and warehouses. There is no limit on income, and the more you produce, the higher percentage you keep. If selling houses at night and on weekends sounds good to you, don't call us. But if you want to work business hours, have unlimited income, and leverage the relationships you already have, we want to talk to you. Please visit us at texastenantrep.com. That's Texas, TEXAS, tenant, TENANT, rep, REP.com.
We are back talking to Sheffield Clark and Bobby Sharp at Coinsource. You can find them online at coinsource.net. Go there and open up your own cryptocurrency Bitcoin account with them. That'd be cool. I'd like to see what kind of pop they're going to get from this. And I need to do one of my own, by the way. Okay, so we were talking just before the break about traceability and all that kind of thing. But blockchain is highly traceable. It's ultimately a ledger that tracks everything, and so it's almost
that
like
publicly records the transaction. It's a distributed ledger. It's probably the most intrusive. Yeah, I mean, in theory, the most. There's this misnomer that it's anonymous. It's not. I mean, it really is the most traceable transaction you can have.
You gave a great analogy on during the break.
Yeah, it would be like taking U.S. dollars out of a bank ATM at your drive up at one of the major banks, and that bank tracing it by the serial number
Of each individual bill. Wow. That is hard to imagine. And of course, the blockchain is starting to go way beyond just Bitcoin.
Right.
And it's doing all kinds of other things. Are you guys involved in any other aspects of the blockchain?
We got a couple good projects that we're working on right now. Just getting, being early adopters in the industry, we kind of have been able to forge pretty good relationships with developers and developer architects that can actually understand how to develop blockchain. There's a lot of blockchain developers out there, but there's not really a lot of blockchain developers.
And
just like there's a lot of blockchain projects out there.
Yeah,
exactly.
Really
not necessary.
But we do want to apply it to energy is a project that we're kind of focused on right now.
Okay.
Don't want to get too deep into that.
Sure.
I'm keeping that under wraps. But
okay.
But no, we're pretty excited about.
There's some real world applications out there that can
big time.
Change how commerce is done.
In my industry, the place where people keep talking about blockchain being involved in the commercial real estate business and even the residential real estate business is in the title, because the title of a property is still done so paper intensively,
right,
that this
smart contract is what you're
smart contract.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and why, if I just bought a house yesterday or a office building yesterday and I got a title policy guaranteeing good title and I sell that two months from now, why do they have to get a whole new policy? Why doesn't the old policy, which is already guaranteed that it's a clean title, why do we have to pay that again?
I think we know the answer to that, but yes. There's a lot of people
go down
put
that
out of business.
Well, it will, but the blockchain, because it's this giant ledger that's being verified from so many different sources simultaneously.
It automates things and it enhances efficiency.
It should enhance efficiency. It should reduce the cost. It should speed things up.
Right.
I mean, all kinds of stuff.
You've been studying.
I know some buzzwords. I would love to say I know what they mean.
Next step, setting up that Coinsource account.
This afternoon. I just got to get an approval from someone at home as to the dollar amount.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've talked a lot about how your service is really providing a lot of great opportunities for people. It's reducing transaction costs. But with the volatility of a Bitcoin value having changed so much. I mean, I don't know if it was on your website or another one that I looked at yesterday, just looking at the graph of all-time valuation of a Bitcoin, going from when you guys got in at 160, it peaked at just under 20,000. It's now down to about 4,000, a little over 4,000. A lot of volatility. And I was kind of playing with it because this thing that I was looking at, you could look at the last hour trading value, the last 6 hours, the last 6 days, the last, year, 3 months, whatever. So there's a fair amount of volatility in it. But with that volatility, do you feel like it's still a good place for people to play because it's still? I don't know what
I'll
I'm asking
answer
exactly.
For me, I would diversify.
Yeah.
I would never tell people go out and buy a bunch of Bitcoin because it's going to make a run. I would never give advice on that to that level.
It's a good asset class.
But I can tell you right now, if you're looking at Bitcoin, I mean, just take a look at our market. Take Apple. See what that's done in the last week.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
1,000 point swings on the Dow. I mean, very similar.
Yeah.
Honestly.
And I think that's the thing. But
it's
if
more
somebody has a dollar,
but
they
why
feel
not
like,
hedge with gold? Why not hedge with silver? Why not hedge with Bitcoin?
Right.
I mean, it's good to diversify, to Bobby's point, your portfolio in general.
Yeah. So when people are coming to your customers, is your ideal customer somebody that's more involved in the transaction of, moving money from one place to the next, or is it more the investor that's just finding a way to invest in Bitcoin?
Yeah, a combination of.
I think it is a
all of the
combination.
above.
I mean, our for a while we had a machine in New York. It was our first machine we put in New York. It was at the what's the terminal?
It's the Whitehall. It's the Staten Island Ferry Terminal in
okay.
Lower Manhattan. So
Sure.
30 million people a year,
Wow.
visibility wise.
But downtown, it's downtown, right by Wall Street. You'd be surprised at the amount of suits that came over to buy Bitcoin at the time. Right? There's a lot of different kinds of people that utilize this, but a large customer base in New York was people that probably just walked right off the Wall Street Stock Exchange floor, came over to the machine, and threw $1,000 into it.
What's the biggest misconception that you guys have to deal with from customers, regulators, whomever?
I think what you said earlier, that kind of the perception here is that it's still used for, illicit activity, and that's just not accurate, especially as it relates to our business.
Well, and the currency in general is changing. The climate is changing. Everything's changing. I mean, 15 years ago, we were told never get in a car with a stranger and never go talk to anybody on the internet that you don't know. That's out the window.
Yeah.
Uber made sure of that.
Airbnb.
We're staying at their houses. So things evolve. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
things evolve. I mean, they just do.
I don't take a trip anywhere anymore without using Airbnb and Uber practically. I mean, I would say 80% of my trips now are Airbnb and Uber instead of rental cars, taxis, and hotels.
When we had VCRs, we went to DVD players, which was random, right? Oh my gosh. And then, and then we went from DVD players to streaming, right? And that's all happening very, very fast. And I think that what people need to start to understand, it's not about the amount of money or making money in this industry. It's just getting familiar with it. It would be nothing to put $20 into a machine. And I'm not advocating for everybody to go put 20, but I'm just saying it would be good to be familiar with it.
Yeah.
So you're not the guy with the VCR and the time has been blinking.
I'm advocating for it. It's the quickest, most convenient way to buy Bitcoin is to use
Well, and it's a good
Coinsource
education. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing. I want to go
Yeah.
open one up because I just want to learn how this stuff works.
Right.
And if I'm not,
Right.
if I don't have a little skin in the game, I'm not going to be paying attention.
That's correct.
And it's fun to follow it.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like buying a stock.
Yeah.
If you buy a stock or you buy an index fund or whatever, mutual fund, you're going to pay more attention and learn how things are working in the economy. So, yeah, I like the idea of just doing it because right now there's so much talk about it and yet there's so much ignorance about it, myself included.
And the new technology are these U.S. dollar-backed stable coins. That's the same concept, same utility. It's in digital form, but it's always tied to U.S. dollar values. So we're really starting to explore that as well and how we could utilize that for our customer base and some of the transactions that we've discussed.
I hadn't heard about that. I mean, how is that different than just
we talk
an electronic dollar?
The volatility, it helps stem that because you have a dollar, but it's dollar backed. So it's dollar for dollar per. So there's back kind of like an FDIC, basically. A stable coin would be the backer of all these transactions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, are you guys getting into any of the other cryptocurrencies, the Ethereum or anything else?
I think we're going to list Ethereum and maybe Litecoin are the two that we're looking at currently.
And how big are those relative to Bitcoin?
Market cap wise?
Yeah.
I'd say Ethereum's maybe 25% of what Bitcoin is. And, Litecoin's been around almost, it was really second to the party in terms of behind Bitcoin. It's got 6-year staying power. So it's a much, $25 maybe for a Litecoin.
For a Litecoin.
And it's
right
probably
now.
10% market cap. And again, those are wild guesses.
And the total market cap of Bitcoin right now is what?
I think the whole crypto market's $130 billion. And I think Bitcoin always makes up 60% of that.
Okay.
Really?
This ebbs and flows as we've laid out, so I don't have the exact percentages in front of me, but
yeah. But right now, your ATMs only will deal with Bitcoin.
Right, and again, you can buy and sell Bitcoin though. You can come up and sell us coins, and then we'll dispense U.S. dollars as well if you want to cash those coins out.
But that doesn't stop us from innovating, Bob. What we're really trying to do is continually adding features on our machine that people can utilize, like traditional banking, but not banking, but just other things that they can do at the machine, right? Other things that they could utilize it for.
At the end of the day, we fully believe we're servicing that pocket of the U.S. that we've discussed, the underbanked and underserved, and it would make total sense for us to take the infrastructure that we've built, both in compliance, our footprint, our banking relationship, our armored car service that we employ, et cetera, and start to implement other traditional financial services into this to not hedge against cryptocurrency, but definitely expand the offering to our customer base, such as bill pay or such as formalizing the remittance piece.
Right.
There's just a lot of directions that we can go with this to not only expand our revenue streams, but also, again, expand what we're offering to the customer.
So let's go back to the beginning. Where did this idea come from? And at a time when Bitcoin's at 160 and the market cap's very tiny and there's not a lot of people using it or even heard of it, where did this come from?
We were introduced, we both are entrepreneurs. We were both introduced by a mutual friend. And we initially, talk about not being techie, we went down to try to build this mobile application idea that we had. And the dev team was in Austin. And it was kind of one of these things where, you know how developers are, or a lot of them. I won't put them all in the same net, but they'll move the goalpost, right? Oh, well, if you want to add this to this, that's another $50,000. And all of a sudden, this thing's starting to creep up, And so we were driving back from Austin, and I think Sheffield is the original one that brought it to my attention, and I was all on board because I loved it. It was something different. It was fringe. It wasn't, it was something where we realized there was a lot of talk about this, but there wasn't a lot of people making money at this or coming up with business ideas. So we literally were driving back from Austin, and Chef said, "Man, I'll do this, but I want to make sure we're as clean as can be, that we make sure we are compliance tested, that we have the best of the best." So we literally
real quickly, the Justice Department had just kind of enacted this what was it called?
The
Operation Choke Point for all cash-heavy businesses. Okay. And that's all I was reading. Yeah. And I was thinking, good gosh, this is going to be impossible to get into from a compliance perspective. Because, again, we only really had the capital and wanted to start with one or two machines, and you almost had to build out your compliance infrastructure in a way that it could support one machine or support 100 machines.
Yeah.
So it was a leap of faith. But, again, we were traditional, ethical, honest business guys that have always ran those types of companies, and it was really the only way to do it, to be honest.
What was it about deciding, what was the decision point or the need that you saw that suddenly said, hey, ATMs, that's the solution?
Well, he used to own ATMs, one, so I felt good about the kiosk part. Two, this was an industry that was just evolving.
Yeah. So
it was just now getting off the ground. And three, the people that we were, I guess you would call the competitors at the time, I think we felt like, gosh darn, we could do a lot better than these guys.
I think a lot
sorry, we're over time, so we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, we are back. This is the next level, and we're talking to Sheffield Clark and Bobby Sharp, founders of Coinsource. So we were talking about where this idea came from, and Sheffield, you were just talking about there was actually some regulation that came up where it was going to make cash-heavy businesses almost impossible to be banked.
Yeah, and it seemed just insurmountable, Bob, reading about how difficult it was for any business that's cash exclusive to get any kind of traditional banking account, which was all foreign to us. I mean, in my history, I had a business. I went in with my documentation, my articles of incorporation, and my information, and you set up a business banking account, and you start doing business. So this was foreign. But again, I think that besides the fact that that's just the guys that we are and that we wanted to build that type of business, I think that pushed us into really focusing on compliance out of the gate and regulation. And we had gotten a quote for our AML and KYC policy for about $30,000 from a New York attorney. And again, for one machine, that just didn't seem reasonable or doable.
The machine was only 8.
Yeah, the machine was a third of the cost of the AML policy, and most AML policies, from what I've seen, are 80% boilerplate. So
what's AML?
That's anti-money laundering, and that's something that you have to have as part of the guidelines that are issued from FinCEN, which is our federal regulator. So we started Googling anti-money laundering policy attorneys in Dallas-Fort Worth. And Arnold Spencer's name came up at Aiken Gump. So Arnold answered our call. We were driving back from Austin. We went in and visited with him the next day, and he's our general counsel today. But Arnold's a former assistant U.S. prosecuting attorney, was a partner at Aiken Gump, had been on the speaking circuit for anti-money laundering. So we were just blessed and fortunate, frankly, to to be matched with a guy that was the perfect niche for what this industry needed, and to bring credibility to two younger entrepreneurial guys. Not that Arnold's too old, but much more wise and savvy, and had been around the block on the regulations part.
So what's the first step when you get this idea and you say, I'm going to serve these people that are, cash heavy? What's the first thing you do?
Well, the first thing we did was obviously go meet with Arnold, start to craft the policies that we really needed to have to protect ourselves, and then we literally called the distributor and we bought a machine.
I mean, we started talking to all the manufacturers, doing our due diligence, and I think we'd be remiss not to mention our third co-founder, who's Travis Goff out in San Diego, and he was actually running biz dev and was a vice president at the biggest manufacturer in the world at that point.
Wow.
So Travis and I started talking and built a rapport, and he's really more of a Bitcoin guy, much more intelligent in that area. Again, I was just used to running ATMs, and Bobby was used to running restaurants, so that didn't really lend itself to running a Bitcoin ATM.
Yeah.
So Travis, again, right place, right time for us. We were fortunate to bring on a guy that kind of had the technical expertise that could run the flow of funds
and the Bitcoin.
And the Bitcoin. Yeah, and he had the Bitcoin. So he brought the inventory to the table.
We didn't have any Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We started this.
Well, yeah, so I guess for your business, you have to own some Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I'd love to tell you I had bought Bitcoin back in 2009 and, is independently wealthy now on just Bitcoin appreciation, but that wasn't the case. We were more attracted, honestly, to the business side of it with the ATM than we were, the concept of Bitcoin. Obviously, we're quite bullish now.
Yeah. So what's the one thing that, sitting here today, 4 years later, and you've got how many, 200 ATMs around the country, something like that?
About 250.
250?
Yeah.
Okay.
250 with our own proprietary software platform and really have focused heavily on the licensing piece. I mean, we've really built out not only our money transmission licenses in a lot of these states that require them, which is going to give us an enormous amount of flexibility to expand that product offering that we've been talking about, but also we were the first Bitcoin ATM company in the world, and hopefully the only, to be approved by the New York Department of Financial Services, which is cream of the crop in terms of regulators across the globe and the financial hub of the world. It took us 38 months to obtain it, but they just issued that back November 1st, so we're pretty proud of that.
That's practically your whole company history.
Yeah, basically.
Congrats, that's huge.
We had to give our final blood sample about a few months ago, and it passed, so we're stoked.
Bare your soul, is what they said.
300-page application. It was like the hardest thing ever. I think they called our high schools.
But again, finding a guy like Arnold to spearhead that piece for us, really fostered that process along and streamlined it for us and gave us a chance to get it. And I think
so was that the most difficult thing you guys had to do, is to get that?
It gave us a lot of credibility. We're number 9 in 3.5 years.
I think I think that and then identifying a banking partner that understands our business, that appreciates our business, that appreciates our product in the space and in the ecosystem, and then kind of embracing that with open arms and really helping us continue to iterate and improve on what we're doing to insulate ourselves from issues and insulate other people from issues. I mean, I think it's
risky though. It is risky.
Well, any cash-heavy business, cash for crypto is a double down in risk for a financial institution. So I think that identifying a banker that likes our business and appreciates us, and then obviously the team we've built is top notch in my opinion.
I mean, Sheffield says it great. We almost took these last 3.5, 4 years now. This has more been a beta. So we've built out now this infrastructure. We can really grow. I mean, we could be at 1,000 machines right now if we wanted to, but we really needed to have our own software, our own proprietary, not only software, but just everything that we do now. We do it kind of under our.
I think we decided early on we're going to be the fast snail in the race, and we've built our infrastructure out in a way, to Bobby's point, and our staff and automation through our software, that we really feel like we could 4 or 5x our kiosk network right now with very little new expense to the business, and that's a good place to be in.
So it sounds like your business, with all these kiosks and having to have the cryptocurrency and investing in all these licenses and regulators, this is a pretty daunting financial burden. I mean, how did you? I mean, you just fund this out of your pockets? You take on investors? How did you guys make this happen?
We've got some friends and family and private money early on. We've definitely put our own money. Yeah, limited. We've definitely put our own money back in, and We've never raised from venture capitalists, though, never raised private equity. It's been all bootstrapped and really organically funded.
We're ready, though, if anybody would like to call us. No, just
Yeah, send Bitcoin too.
There's laws against that.
So whenever you, so have you been profitable from day one? I mean, is it being funded internally from profits?
Yes.
Wow, we did something which really,
awesome.
really weird. We operate out of cash flow. To all the people
what's
out there.
that about?
Now, 2018 was difficult. I mean, I don't know any company in the space, even the blue chip companies. Coinbase raised $300 million, 6 months ago?
Yep.
And that was after a $150 million round a year and a half ago. So, I mean, you got to raise money in this industry. And to Bobby's point, I think that, there's a chance that we are going to pursue some partners that are strategic that can help us on a commercial basis as well, that can help us expand our business not only domestically but globally. But yeah, I mean, 18 was volatile and tough, and I think we're stronger for it. To be honest with you,
is that mainly because it went from almost 20,000 to 4,000?
Yeah, I think that built up a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah.
I mean, just like the stock market analogy. I mean, when things are bouncing all over the place and losing 80-90% of its value, you're going to have some people pull back and really wait and see if this thing's legitimate or not. I read an article the other day that said that Bitcoin died 95 times in 2018, according to the press.
Yeah, well. Press.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not going to bet that they're
no, I'm just saying though that
smartest guys in the room.
Unfortunately, the stock market really isn't much about the viability of companies anymore either. It's all about the press and what good news comes out today or what bad news comes out tomorrow, and it can move the whole market.
So what's the biggest risk to your industry right now?
I used to say, for us, we would welcome regulation. We're one of the few companies that actually run to it, so we're actually okay with it. That would help us tremendously, having getting rid of some of this. I don't want to call them dead weight, but people that are not operating by the rules, right?
Right.
I think the biggest risk is cash going away at some point. That would really screw our business model a little bit.
So people just stop using the service, you mean?
Well, no, cash in general. I mean, if they just, there's a federal digital mint that's going to be launched, right? So I think people are going to start getting more and more used to using digital formats.
I would say if a big bank flipped the switch on Bitcoin ATM transactions at 1% at the kiosk, but
okay.
I don't think that was the reason behind why Bitcoin was created. I don't think our customer base would necessarily even migrate to that. I mean, we go back to that libertarian customer. I mean, that's the reason they're using us to begin with, is because they want to get away from the centralized model of the big banks. I won't name them, but
yes, we know who they are.
Yeah, we know who they are. We bailed them out once or twice.
I think our competitors that have chosen not to run their businesses the way we have, I mean, that's something that's an uphill battle for us, just because we do ask for a driver's license from $1. We do want to know who our customer is and build a relationship with that customer. And, I think we can provide a better level of service to the customer by knowing them better. But people make it easier to buy Bitcoin. Some of our competitors do than what we do. So, I mean, we've suffered as a result in areas.
But you guys, you're not acting as any kind of a financial advisor, investment
not
house
at all.
or anything like that. So,
no.
So if I if I go and buy a bunch of cryptocurrency through your service, and then I do something else with it later, you're not having to report any of that to anybody. It's not like I receive a 1099 for like increases in value or anything like that.
No, but we want to know who our customer is from a business perspective too, is my point, not just compliance, because we do have bigger aspirations to build out other product offerings. And I think if we know our customer and we can build things out that are going to or make their daily lives easier in terms of their finances down the line, I think that we'll be well equipped to do that.
So, the other thing real quick is just making it easier on the back end so people aren't in the weeds in their head about cryptocurrency. When you use a debit card at a convenience store, there's a lot of stuff happening in the background that people don't realize, right?
Yes.
And that's what we have to start doing with this industry. We need it all to happen kind of in the background where it doesn't really they're used to doing it a certain way, and they still can. It's just done on the back end a certain way.
Yeah.
And even just allowing the service of paying your bills at our kiosk for the cash-heavy customer. I mean, those are things that we're looking at just in the interim that we could get up and running quickly that we feel like would service our customer pretty well.
So we've only got about 20 seconds left, but what would you do differently if you had to do it over again? Anything you would change?
Gosh, no, I don't think so. Do you, Chef?
I mean, there's little life lessons throughout any business, but I think
that's awesome.
Buy Bitcoin when we got into it. Buy at
Buy,
168.
don't just service. Well, guys, thanks so much for being on the show today. We've really enjoyed it. I've learned so much. And so thank you, listeners. Please go to coinsource.net, download their app, invest. If you want to learn more about the show, just look us up, The Next Level Show. Make sure the word "the" is in there. YouTube, podcast, and, of course, thenextlevelshow.com. See you next week.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, guys.